Welcome to Unit 5 of the TESOL course at Southern Utah University. In this video, we'll continue talking about vocabulary and focus on teaching. We'll talk about different factors that impact how well vocabulary is acquired. We'll talk about some principles for teaching vocabulary as well as strategies for learning vocabulary. We've been talking about the 4 language systems. Vocabulary is one of those systems. Teachers need to understand these systems so we can explain them well to our students. Let's talk about some factors, and there are many, but we're going to focus on a few factors that really impact vocabulary learning. One of these is frequency of encounter. How frequently has the learner encountered the word? The more we encounter the word, the more likely we are to acquire that word and build it as part of our vocabulary. Another factor is the saliency of a word. So if a word is salient, that means it's noticeable. It's easy to recognize. So saliency, meaning is the word highlighted in a classroom, or perhaps in the text that the student's reading, the word is very obvious and noticeable. Those factors make words more salient, and the more salient a word is, the more likely a learner is to acquire or learn it. Another is familiarity. And there's lots of ways we could think about words being familiar. I mean, it could be that the word is very similar to a word we already know, either in our native language or in another language we know, or it's similar to a word we've already learned in that language, and so that helps us. So familiarity can help us learn words faster. And the last one is strategy use. And we'll get into this later, but the more strategies are used, the more likely learners are to acquire the vocabulary that they encounter. Let's take a moment to talk about some principles for vocabulary teaching, things that teachers can focus on to make vocabulary learning better in their classrooms. One of these is to focus on both form and use. Now, when linguists talk about focusing on form, usually what they're talking about is learning the structure of words. So in this case, we're understanding the morphology and the grammar of the word, and that's really important. But that's not enough. We need to know how to use the word then. So we're learning about context. We're learning about appropriateness and collocations. So we need to teach all those aspects of vocabulary. Another is that we need to prioritize often high-frequency words. Which words are most useful to our learners? And those tend to be the words that are most common. We also need to look at what context are our learners going to be using language, and then try to find out what words then they need to learn so that they'll be successful in that context. Corpus linguistics can help a lot with this. Also, we want to teach lexical chunks. So when we talk about chunking in vocabulary learning, what we mean are phrases that frequently appear together. And these kinds of phrases can help learners develop fluency faster. They're not just learning one word and then awkwardly trying to guess how to fit that into a sentence. They're learning these phrases that frequently occur together. We talk about these collocations, and that can help learners become more fluent more quickly. And then, of course, as we just talked about, encouraging strategy use, modeling it in your classroom, helping learners try strategies, evaluate them, and figure out when are they useful and in what situations should I be using which strategies. So we've talked about strategies a lot. Let's get into some specific strategies that can be useful. This is not an exhaustive list. There are a lot of strategies, but let's highlight a few of them. One of them is teach learners how to use dictionaries. We just can't assume that learners understand how dictionaries work. We need to teach them about headwords, those lemmas. We need to teach them about definitions and why definitions are ordered, that the first definition tends to be the most common, and we need to teach them that. We need to teach them how to use the pronunciation guide in a dictionary. Many online dictionaries will also pronounce the words for us. Some good dictionaries will give collocations. They'll also highlight which words are highly frequent. They'll describe about usage, what context are words used in. So there's so much we can learn about how to use dictionaries effectively to make vocabulary learning better. Another strategy is teaching learners to make smart guesses. And you may have heard of this phrase, learners can guess words from context. And they can, but they need to learn how to do that. And sometimes it's by identifying what part of speech or grammatical category the word has in the sentence, analyzing the sentence. Now, is this word functioning as a verb or a noun or something else? Then we can also use context. Is there something in the sentence or the paragraph that suggests that this word has a positive meaning or a negative meaning, or that it's related to biology or related to sports? We can also use morphology and word parts to try and figure out what the word might mean and making guesses there. So teaching learners all of these different ways about how to make smart guesses when they encounter a new word will make them better vocabulary learners. Another way is helping learners select wisely which words they should learn. So if they're reading a book and they come across a word they don't know, is that a word that they should start learning? Well, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. They can still understand the meaning even though they don't know the meaning of that particular word. But if they're encountering the word often, many times, or it's a really crucial word to what they're reading or what they've been listening to, then that's the kinds of words that they need to stop and learn. So helping students make choices about that, how to spend their time with vocabulary learning, and choosing words that are going to be the highest impact on their progress and their understanding. Teaching students how to learn word families. When they're learning words, are they grouping them in with other words that they already know that have similar meanings or function? Are they grouping words by antonyms and synonyms and ways to help them make connections between what they already know about the language and what they're learning new about the language? So using word families and other kinds of lists and categorizations can help learners retain words and make connections better. Using mnemonic devices, teaching learners some strategies for remembering what words mean. Different tricks of the mind to help to say, okay, this word starts with this letter, and so I'll remember it because I know this word that starts with a similar letter, or something like that. And lastly, keeping a journal, writing down words, keeping a list of which words you're learning and why they matter and what they connect to, and getting into some of these other strategies we talked about before, dissecting words by morphology and making connections with synonyms and antonyms and words that have a similar theme to them. Using a journal there can help learners better record the words they use and use them in sentences productively. So in this video we've talked about different factors that can affect vocabulary learning, some things that teachers should keep in mind when they teach vocabulary, and strategies that students should be using to become more effective vocabulary learners.